Back again with another review, and today we're going to wrap up the Blade trilogy with my review of the 2004 sequel, Blade Trinity. Yeah, this one, just right off the bat, it just sucks. And we're going to talk about that here. But the film here is directed by David S. Goyer, who wrote the first two movies, or, had a hand in the screenplay. And, right off the bat, just the tone of the movie is just off. But, let's talk about the plot first, before we move forward. So here's the plot to the film. Basically, Blade is framed for the murder of a human, exposing him to the public, and now the authorities are after Blade. The vampires, they resurrect Dracula, or as they call Drake in the film, the original and most powerful vampire. And now, and his basically, as to why they want to use Drake's blood to create a new race, or a race of day-walking vampires. And soon Blade, he teams up with these young vampire hunters, also called the Night Stalkers. And so together they have to fight and eradicate the enemy. And that's pretty much the plot here to the film. The cast here, Wesley Snipes as Blade, you can tell it's just a very disengaged performance here. His heart is not in it. You can just tell by his body language that he doesn't want to be there. And I know there was apparently a lot of clashing behind the scenes with the director, and I think a lot of this movie falls on David S. Goyer, but I'll talk about him a little bit. You have the Night Stalkers, played by Jessica Biel, who you find out her character is the daughter of Whistler. Ryan Reynolds is Hannibal King in the film. Chris Christopherson, he does come back as Whistler, but he has very limited screen time because he's killed off by the FBI. And going back to the Night Stalkers for a minute, Ryan Reynolds, he does have a few moments that I didn't mind. He definitely shows some of that early Deadpool style humor before, becoming Deadpool. So you get some of that here. But really, and I'll be honest, Blade didn't need a team. I didn't think the team dynamic was needed. It felt like, Blade really took a backseat here for these two up-and-comers, these, Jessica Biel and, Ryan Reynolds. The main villain in the film that I thought was very weak, played by Dominic Purcell, which I know he would later be in that show, I think Prison Break. And I just thought he was a very one-note villain. Didn't have any presence or power. Again, Chris Christopherson, if you love him in the first two movies, he's killed off in the first 5 minutes. One of the main, also, I mentioned the main villain, but you also have this other vampire played by Parker Posey, and I'm like, who? She looks familiar, and I'm like, okay, that's, Parker Posey. And one other vampire is played by Triple H, and Triple H can't act. And you have some other questionable casting here. You have John Michael Higgins in the film as a psychiatrist, but you also find out that he's working for the vampires. James Remar's in the film, who works for the FBI. Patton Oswalt, he's in the film as a technician for, the Night Stalkers. Eric Bogosian, he's in the film in the opening, from Talk Radio. Like in the movie, he plays like a TV commentator, and that's how the film opens up. Within the first 10 minutes, you have this dialogue between Eric Bogosian and John Michael Higgins about, the public's perception of vampires. And, when I saw that, I immediately knew that something was off about this movie. I heard how bad it was, and, but in the first 10 minutes, when you have this dialogue, conversation between, Eric Bogosian and John Michael Higgins, again, you just know that something's off here. And it's just not the same. That aura, again, of what made the first two movies great is not there. But it's just the casting, it's strange. Again, you got Snipes, who's not engaged at all. You have these two other vampire hunters that are really taking up space. And even though Ryan Reynolds has a few moments, but it's just the whole team dynamic thing was not needed. That's just, so overall the casting is just weird. And it's just, there's some good actors, there's some good talent in there, but James Remar is a good actor, Eric Bogosian's a good actor, but you got Triple H as one of your main vampires, and I'm like, yeah, Triple H cannot act. And it's weird because I've heard people say, like, Triple H is one of the better things about the movie, and I'm like, what? But yeah, so that's my thoughts on the cast. But the tone and style, again, it's just not there. The atmosphere of what made the first two films great, it's just gone. The whole vibe is very shaky. Gore's direction, it just doesn't have the strength of, the first movie. You have Steve Norrington, who did a great job. The second film, you have Guillermo del Toro, again, also did a great job. And here it just does not work at all. The action scenes, they don't match the quality of the first two movies. I can't remember any, for me, action scenes that really stood out here. The fight between Ryan Reynolds and Triple H, it was just underwhelming. And all you see is Triple H pull off a couple of wrestling moves and do a hair flip. The final fight between Blade and Drake is flat. And again, a lot of the action here, it's just very flat and uninspired. And yeah, the whole film is just, it feels like it's a mess. And for me, watching it for the first time, it was almost like a blur. It's a 2-hour film, and I'm really struggling here to, mention any merits. And, I know for some people out there, they may say, oh, this is a guilty pleasure, or it's not that bad. Yes, it is that bad. And it's a film that will leave you with a headache. It left me with a headache, and it's a shame that, Blade, he came back for, Deadpool versus Wolverine, and that was cool, to see, Snipes back for that little bit. But we never got a proper conclusion. And I don't think we ever will. Snipes, how old is Wesley Snipes? He's got to be, 63, 64? Do you think really he's ever going to come back as Blade? I highly doubt it. He came back for that Deadpool movie, but that's about, I think, all we're going to get. And the few scenes that he has in that film, those scenes alone are better than this movie. So, it's kind of bittersweet that, the last time we saw Blade, he had a few good moments to shine in that Deadpool movie. But we never, again, got really a proper send-off. And it sucks, because we're left with Blade Trinity. And overall, Wesley Snipes, he's detached throughout the movie with an unneeded team dynamic and horrible direction from David S. Goyer. And yeah, third time was definitely not a charm here. But yeah, that's my review. And to give this a rating on the scale to 1 to 10, for me, I'm going to give this a 3. This was a bad sequel. And not the worst I've ever seen, but to me, it's still a bad movie. But that's it. Thank you for watching, and have a good day.